What's up? Um, Went climbing this morning. Unfortunately, I think I might have pulled my groin, so it's a little injured right now. I'm gonna go try Raising Cane's later, so I'm super excited about that. I've already had it once, but I was younger. Time to try it again. I miss it. Last time I remember when I did try, it was really good. So hopefully there's not a long line, but we'll see. Let's get into it. Win-win management training. Several years ago, I was indirectly involved in a consulting project with a very large banking institution that had scores of branches. They wanted us to elevate and improve their management training program, which was supported by an annual budget of $75,000. The program involved selecting college graduates and putting them through 12 2-week assignments in various departments over a 6-month period of time so that they could get a general sense of the industry. They spent 2 weeks in commercial loans, 2 weeks in industrial loans, 2 weeks in marketing, 2 weeks in operations, and so forth. At the end of the 6-month period, they were assigned assistant managers in the various branch banks. Our assignment was to elevate the 6-month formal training period. As we begin, we discovered that the most difficult part of the assignment was to get a clear picture of the desired results. We asked the top executives the key hard questions. What should these people be able to do when they finish the program? And the answers we got were vague and often contradictory. The training program dealt with methods, not results, so we suggested that they set up a pilot training program based on a different paradigm called learning controlled instructions. This was a win-win agreement that involved identifying specific objectives and criteria that would demonstrate their accomplishments and identify the guidelines, resources, accountability, and consequences that result when the objectives were met. The consequences in this case were promotion to assistant manager when they would receive the on-the-job part of the training and a significant increase in salary. We had to really press to get the objectives hammered out. What is you want them to understand about accounting? What about marketing? What about real estate loans? And we want down this list. They finally came up with more than 100 objectives, which we specified, reduced, and consolidated until we came down to 39 specific behavioral objectives with criteria attached to them. The trainees were highly motivated by both the opportunity and the increased salary to meet the criteria as soon as possible. There was a big win in it for them, and there was also a big win for the company because they would have assistant branch managers who met results-oriented criteria instead of just showing up for 12 different activity traps. So we explained the difference between learned controlled instruction and system controlled instruction to the trainees. We basically said, here are the objectives and the criteria. Here are the resources, including learning from each other. So go to it. As soon as you meet the criteria, you will be promoted to assistant managers. They were finished in 3.5 weeks. Shifting the training paradigm have released unbelievable motivation and creativity. As with many paradigm shifts, there was resistance. Almost all of the top executives simply wouldn't believe it. When they were shown the evidence that the criteria had been met, they basically said, these trainees don't have the experience. They lack the seasoning necessary to give them the kind of judgment we want them to have as an assistant branch manager. In talking with them later, we found that what many of them were really saying was, we went through GOAT week. How come these guys don't have to? Because of course they couldn't put it that way. They lack seasoning, which was much more acceptable expression. In addition, for obvious reasons, including the $75,000 budget for a 6-month program, the personnel department was upset. So we responded, fair enough, let's develop some more objectives and attach criteria to them. But let's say with the paradigm of learner-controlled instructions, we hammered out 8 more objectives with very tough criteria in order to give the executives the assurance that the people were adequately prepared to be assistant branch managers and continue the on-the-job part of the trainee program. After participating in some of the sessions where these criteria were developed, several of the executives remarked that if the trainees could meet these tough criteria, they would be better prepared than almost any who had gone through the 6-month program. We had prepared the trainees to expect resistance. We took the additional objectives and criteria back to them and said, just as we expected, management wants you to accomplish more additional objectives with even tougher criteria than before. They have assured us this time that if you meet these criteria, they will make you assistant managers. They went to work in unbelievable ways. They went to the executives in departments such as accounting and basically said, "Sir, I am a member of this new pilot program called Learner Controlled Instruction, and it is my understanding that you participated in developing the objectives and the criteria. I have 6 criteria to meet in this particular department. I was able to pass 3 of them off with skills I gained in college. I was able to get another one out of a book. I learned the 5th one from Tom, the fellow you trained last week. I only have 1 criterion left to meet, and I wonder if you or someone else in the department might be able to spend a few hours with me to show me how." So they spent half a day in department instead of 2 weeks. These trainees cooperated with each other, brainstormed with each other, and they accomplished the additional objectives in a week and a half. The 6-month program was reduced to 5 weeks, and the results were significantly increased. The kind of thinking can similarly affect every area of organizational life if people have the courage to explore their paradigms and to concentrate on win-win. I'm always amazed at the results that happen both to individuals and to organizations when responsible, proactive, self-directing individuals are turned loose on a task. Win-win performance agreements. Creating win-win performance agreements requires vital paradigm shifts. The focus is on results, not methods. Most of us tend to supervise methods. We use the Gopher delegation discussed in Habit 3, the methods of management I used with Sandra when I asked her to take pictures of our son as he was water skating. But win-win agreements focus on results, releasing tremendous individual human potential and creating greater synergy, building PC in the process instead of focusing exclusively on P. With win-win accountability, people evaluate themselves. The traditional evaluation games people play are awkward and emotionally exhausting. And win-win people evaluate themselves using the criteria that they themselves help to create up front. And if you set up correctly, people can do that. With a win-win delegation agreement, even a 7-year-old boy can tell for himself how well he's keeping the yard green and clean. My best experiences in teaching university classes have come when I've created a win-win shared understanding of the goal up front. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Here are the basic requirements for an A, B, or C. My goal is to help every one of you get an A. Now you take what we've talked about and analyze and come up with your own understanding of what you want to accomplish that is unique to you. Then let's get together and agree on the grade you want and what you plan to do to get it. Management philosopher and consultant Peter Drucker recommends the use of a manager letter to capture the essence of performance agreements between managers and their employees. Following a deep and thorough discussion of expectations, guidelines, and resources to make sure they are in harmony with organizational goals, the employee writes a letter to the manager that summarizes the discussion and indicates when the next performance plan or review discussion will take place. Developing such a win-win performance agreement is the central activity of management. With an agreement in place, employees can manage themselves within the framework of that agreement. The manager can serve like a pace car in a race. He can get things going and then get out of the way. His job from then on is to remove the oil spills. When a boss becomes the first assistant to each of his subordinates, he can greatly increase his span of control. Entire levels of administration and overhead can be eliminated. Instead of supervising 6 or 8, such a manager can supervise 20, 30, 50, or more. In win-win performance agreements, consequences become the natural or logical result of performance rather than a reward or punishment arbitrarily handed out by the people in charge. There are basically four kinds of consequences: rewards and penalties that management or parents can control, financial, psychic, opportunity, and responsibility. Financial consequences include such things as income, stock options, allowances, or penalties. Psychic or psychological consequences include recognition, approval, respect, credibility, and the loss of them. Unless people aren't in a survival mode, psychic compensation is often more motivating than financial compensation. Opportunity, including training, development, perks, and other benefits. Responsibility has to do with scope and authority, either of which can be enlarged or dismissed. Win-win agreements specify consequences in one or more of those areas, and the people involved know it up front. So don't play games. Everything is clear from the beginning. In addition to these logical personal consequences, it is also important to clearly identify what the natural organizational consequences are. For example, what will happen if I'm late to work, if I refuse to cooperate with others, if I don't develop good win-win performance agreements with my subordinates, if I don't hold them accountable for desired results, or if I don't promote their professional growth and career development. When my daughter turned 16, we set up a win-win agreement regarding use of the family car. We agreed that she would obey the laws of the land and that she would keep the car clean and properly maintained. We agreed that she would use the car only for responsible purposes and would serve us as a cab driver for her mother and me within reason. And we also agreed that she would do all her other jobs cheerfully without being reminded. These were our wins. We also agreed that I would provide some resources, the car, gas, and insurance, and we agreed that she would meet weekly with me, usually on Sunday afternoon, to evaluate how she was doing based on our agreement. The consequences were clear. As long as she kept her part of the agreement, she could use the car. If she didn't keep it, she would lose the privilege until she decided to. This win-win agreement set up clear expectations from the beginning on both our parts. It was a win for her. She got to use the car, and it was certainly a win for Sandra and me. Now she would handle her own transportation needs and even some of ours. We didn't have to worry about maintaining the car or keeping it clean, and we had a built-in accountability, which meant I didn't have to hover over her or manage her methods. Her integrity, her conscience, her power of discernment, and our high emotional bank account managed her infinity better. We didn't have to get emotionally strung out trying to supervise her every move and coming up with punishments or rewards on the spot if she didn't do the things we thought she would. We had a win-win agreement, and it liberated us all. Win-win agreements are tremendously liberating, but as the product of isolated techniques, they won't hold up. Even if you set them in the beginning, there is no way to maintain them without personal integrity and a relationship of trust. A true win-win agreement is a product of the paradigm, the character, and the relationships out of which it grows. In that context, it defines and directs the interdependent interactions for which it was created. One antidote that I would love to take apart from the story that she had with her her daughter, was the idea around the agreement, of course, but when I was reading that, I was thinking about, when families or parents or just say yes or say no to their kid about certain things, not looking into the fact of okay, what could possibly go wrong here? So I love the idea that they sat down together and said, hey, this is a big responsibility that you're driving a car, and especially a family car that we are using as well. But the consequences of you driving, not knowing what could happen, and setting those clear expectations, or setting that clear idea of what could happen to the other individual or to your partner or to your daughter or your organization or team is very important. And in this situation, it was a win-win agreement where she could use the car, but she has to do certain things to be able to use the car. And I think is a great plan to make sure that they're both on the same page. and they both get their win. So that's very important. And I think that goes a long way in various other things, like a job as also another way to set up a clear expectations. And I think when I'm looking back at when I was controlling mama, I think that was one thing I just did not do good at. What I really wanted to hope was for people to take a level of agency and urgency in their level of work. I wasn't behind their back. I wasn't constantly, at least from my opinion, I wasn't constantly, telling them what to do. But then again, there's this hiccup where if you don't tell them what to do, or you aren't setting clear expectations, sometimes they work at their own level, or what they're doing is not aligning with what you had in mind, or not aligning with the organization. It creates conflict, and they don't even know what their real title is or what they're supposed to be doing, and it's just a hiccup. So setting clear expectations is very important. Another thing that I would want to talk about is one thing that caught my attention earlier. I honestly might think it has something to do with the expectations part, but I just cannot remember as of right now. But the idea. Okay, it's circled around the efficiency and expectations aspect, but the example he gave where he was working with a big bank and they gave him a budget of $7,500,000 within 6 months to help his college graduate students to become assistant managers. For me, it seemed like he made it fun, interactive, but also in a way where they were able to do their own work, and it was a passionate level of work for the students, or young graduate or postgraduate students or entry-level individuals, and they went out there to go accomplish. And instead of 6 months, they did it in 5 weeks. And I think that goes a lot to say with how much work you can get done if you're doing it collectively with other people, but also with the expectations, but also the level of agency that sometimes people can have or supposed to have, that's backed up by their own level of motivation and passion with the project that they're doing. And yeah, I just wanted to note on that. So yeah, we'll move on to systems. I think that's going to be a good chapter or a good little thing to talk about. But yeah.